For nearly 40 years, nobody had officially lived inside apartment 406. According to every public record, the apartment simply did not exist. Yet Daniel still carried the small black key he had discovered inside the forbidden room of Ashcroft House. The number engraved on the metal tag had followed him ever since, 406. He tried convincing himself it was only another forgotten key left behind by the previous owners. But every time he closed his eyes, he remembered the final message written inside the notebook. Apartment 406 is waiting. The sentence refused to leave his thoughts. 3 days passed before Daniel finally decided to search for the address himself. His first stop was the city archive. Old maps covered the walls. Thousands of building records filled endless shelves. The elderly archivist patiently searched every document connected to apartment buildings constructed before 1970. Nothing. No apartment 406. No black key. No owner. Daniel thanked him and prepared to leave. Just before reaching the exit, the archivist quietly asked, "What number did you say again?" 406. The old man hesitated. His expression changed. Then he slowly shook his head. "I've never heard of that apartment." "But—" He stopped speaking. "But what?" The archivist looked around to make sure nobody else could hear. There was once a rumor. People used to talk about an apartment that disappeared. Daniel smiled politely. "You mean demolished?" The old man looked directly into his eyes. "No, I mean disappeared." Without another word, the archivist turned away and refused to continue the conversation. Daniel left the building more confused than before. That evening he searched newspapers, online records, and historical property maps. Nothing. Every search ended exactly the same way. Apartment 406 simply didn't exist. Late that night, his phone vibrated. An unknown number. There was no voice, only silence. Then, a whisper. "You already have the key." The call disconnected immediately. Daniel stared at the screen. Unknown number. No caller information, no recording, nothing. The following morning he returned to the only clue he still had. The old photograph from Ashcroft House. For the first time he looked carefully at the background instead of the people. Behind the mansion, barely visible, stood the silhouette of a tall apartment building. The image was blurry, but one detail remained surprisingly clear. A metal sign beside the entrance. Ashbury Apartments. Daniel searched the name online. The building still existed. It stood on the opposite side of the city, constructed in 1956, exactly the same period as Ashcroft House. Something connected them. He drove there immediately. Ashbury Apartments looked ordinary. 6 stories, old brick walls, faded balconies. Nothing unusual. People entered, people left, children played outside. Everything seemed completely normal. Daniel walked through the main entrance. The lobby felt strangely quiet despite the residents moving around him. An elderly concierge looked up from his newspaper. "Can I help you? I'm looking for apartment 406. The concierge answered without hesitation. "We have 405. We have 407. There has never been a 406. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The concierge pointed toward a framed emergency floor plan hanging beside the elevator. Daniel walked closer. 4th floor. Exactly as the concierge had said. There was no missing space, no hidden hallway, nothing. Apartment 406 simply wasn't there. Daniel almost laughed. Maybe the entire mystery had been nothing more than coincidence. Perhaps the notebook had referred to something symbolic. Perhaps... The elevator arrived. Its old metal doors opened slowly. Daniel stepped inside. The control panel contained the expected buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ground floor. Everything looked perfectly ordinary, until the doors began closing, just before they shut completely. The overhead light flickered. For less than a second, a new button appeared beneath the others, small, unlit, almost invisible. Daniel froze. He blinked. The button disappeared. The elevator continued rising. When it reached the 4th floor, the doors opened. The hallway outside looked completely empty. Daniel stepped forward. Apartment 405 stood to his left. Apartment 407 stood to his right. exactly as before. No space existed between them, no hidden door, no corridor, nothing. Then, somewhere behind him, inside the elevator, a quiet mechanical click echoed through the silence. The button labeled 406 lit up by itself. Daniel stared at the glowing button for several long seconds without moving. The number remained illuminated inside the old elevator. 406. No other button shone with the same pale white light. Every instinct told him not to touch it, yet the strange black key inside his pocket suddenly felt much heavier than before. He slowly reached toward the control panel. His finger stopped only a few centimeters away. The elevator remained perfectly still. No humming, no mechanical sounds, only silence. Finally, Daniel pressed the glowing button. The light beneath his fingertip immediately disappeared. The elevator doors closed by themselves. The cabin began moving. At first it traveled upward exactly as expected. 4th floor, then 5th, then 6th. The floor indicator continued changing. 7, 8, 9. Daniel frowned. Ashbury Apartments only had 6 floors. The elevator should have stopped long ago. Instead, it continued climbing. 10, 11, 12. The cabin never shook. It never accelerated. It simply continued rising through impossible floors that did not exist. Daniel looked toward the emergency panel. The alarm button had vanished. His phone displayed no signal. Even the digital clock had stopped moving. Every second remained frozen. The elevator finally slowed. The floor display changed one last time. 406. The doors opened. A long apartment hallway stretched before him. Soft yellow lights glowed above perfectly clean wooden floors. Fresh wallpaper covered the walls. Nothing looked abandoned. Everything appeared recently occupied. Daniel stepped outside carefully. The elevator doors closed behind him without making a sound. He turned immediately. The elevator had disappeared. Only a blank wall remained. No doors, no control panel, nothing. Daniel felt panic rising inside his chest. He walked slowly through the hallway. Apartment 401, apartment 402, apartment 403. Every door looked identical. Polished brass numbers, fresh paint, perfect condition. The air smelled strangely warm, almost comforting. Yet something felt deeply wrong. No voices, no footsteps, no televisions, no children, hundreds of apartments. Complete silence. Daniel reached apartment 406. The black key inside his pocket suddenly became warm. He removed it slowly. The number engraved on the tag matched the apartment perfectly. His hands trembled. The key slid into the lock effortlessly. Before he could turn it, a voice spoke quietly behind him. "You came back." Daniel spun around. The hallway remained empty. Nobody stood there, only closed apartment doors. The voice came again, closer this time. "You always come back." Daniel stepped away from the door. His breathing became faster. "Who's there?" No answer. Instead, one apartment door slowly opened by itself farther down the corridor. Inside stood only darkness. Another door opened. Then another. Then another. One by one. Every apartment door along the hallway slowly swung open. Each room beyond looked completely black. No furniture, no light, no movement, only endless darkness. Daniel backed toward apartment 406. The warm key almost burned his fingers now. Suddenly, every apartment door slammed shut simultaneously. The sound echoed through the endless corridor like thunder. Silence returned instantly. Daniel looked again toward apartment 406. Someone had slipped a folded piece of paper beneath the door. He picked it up carefully. The handwriting looked painfully familiar, exactly like the notebook inside Ashcroft House. The message contained only one sentence. "You were never supposed to leave the first time." Daniel stared at the paper. His heartbeat pounded louder with every passing second. The hallway lights flickered. For a brief instant, he saw someone standing at the opposite end of the corridor. A man, wearing the same jacket, the same shoes, the same face. Daniel. The lights returned. The hallway became empty again. Then, apartment 406 unlocked itself. Very slowly, the door began opening inward. Complete darkness waited inside. Daniel stood frozen in front of the half-open door. Complete darkness waited beyond the entrance to apartment 406. The hallway behind him had become perfectly silent. Even the soft hum of the old building had disappeared. Only his own breathing remained. The black key inside the lock slowly turned by itself. The apartment door opened completely. A warm yellow light suddenly filled the room. Daniel expected another abandoned apartment. Instead, everything looked lived in. Fresh flowers stood on a small wooden table. A kettle rested quietly on the stove. Family photographs covered the walls. Someone had clearly been living there. Yet thick layers of dust covered every surface. It was as though two different moments in time existed together. Daniel stepped inside. The apartment felt strangely familiar. He could not explain why. The living room contained an old leather sofa facing a bookshelf. A clock above the fireplace had stopped at exactly 2:11, the same time that had appeared throughout everything connected to Ashcroft House. Daniel slowly walked toward the bookshelf. Dozens of identical black notebooks filled every shelf. Each spine carried only 1 year, with 1950, 1960, 1961, 1962, 1963, 1964, his own year. Daniel carefully removed the newest notebook. The cover felt warm. He opened the first page. The handwriting belonged to him, not similar, not almost identical, his own. The first entry described his arrival at Ashbury Apartments earlier that morning. Every detail matched perfectly. Even the conversation with the concierge appeared exactly as it had happened. Daniel turned another page. The next entry described him discovering the hidden elevator button. Another page described him entering apartment 406. Everything had already been written. Every step, every word, every decision. His hands began shaking. He quickly turned toward the final pages. The writing suddenly stopped. Only one unfinished sentence remained. Daniel slowly looked behind. The sentence ended there. The rest of the page remained blank. A cold feeling spread across his back. He did not want to turn around. Every instinct told him to run instead. Very slowly, he looked behind him. A man stood beside the apartment door. The stranger wore the same dark jacket, the same jeans, the same boots. Daniel stared into his face. It was himself, older, perhaps 20 years older. Grey hair covered his temples. Deep lines crossed his exhausted face. His eyes carried unbearable sadness. Neither of them spoke. The older Daniel quietly smiled. Then he placed another black notebook onto the table. I tried leaving. His voice sounded tired. It never worked. Daniel finally found the courage to speak. "What is this place?" The older man looked around the apartment. "It isn't a place. It's where forgotten choices end." Daniel frowned. "I don't understand. You will." The older version slowly pointed toward the bookshelf. Every notebook represented another attempt, another decision, another ending. Every version of Daniel eventually arrived here. Every version believed he had found the truth. Every version failed. Daniel looked back at the notebooks. There were far more than he had first noticed. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. Every possible life, every possible future. The older Daniel picked up the black key. "I was given this key exactly like you. I thought I could change what happened. You can't." Daniel stepped backward. There must be another way. The older man remained silent. Finally, he answered. "There is." A man, dark jacket, jeans, boots, older Daniel, sadness. Forgotten choices, bookshelf, notebooks, possible life. Black key, change, another way. He walked toward a small wooden cabinet hidden beneath the stairs. Inside rested another object, a rusted iron key. Unlike every other key Daniel had found, this one carried no number, only a single word. Basement. Daniel looked up. The basement. The older Daniel nodded slowly. "I never opened it. For all these years. I was too afraid." Daniel took the iron key. It felt colder than ice. The moment he touched it, every light inside apartment 406 went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The bookshelf disappeared. The older Daniel vanished. Only one voice remained, quiet, almost impossible to hear. "Don't make the same mistake." Daniel opened his eyes. He stood alone inside the empty apartment. The furniture had disappeared. The walls had become bare concrete. Apartment 406 no longer existed. Only the black notebook remained on the dusty floor. He picked it up. Inside, only one final sentence had appeared. The basement door is still waiting. Daniel looked toward the apartment entrance. Beyond it, the hallway had vanished. A narrow concrete staircase descended into complete darkness. At the bottom, a heavy steel door waited silently.